Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to wait 2 minutes for people to arrive, and then we'll get started at 11:02. Okay, I think we're almost ready to get started. So good morning, everyone. This is already our sixth webinar on Scopus. We've been doing them every 2 weeks. Usually I have two people with me, Derek and Nicholas, but both of them unfortunately were not able to join, so you're stuck with just me today, but I'm going to do my best to make it quick and painless and leave plenty of time for questions. So today's session is specifically about Scopus and the institutional profiles. And yeah, this is usually the people that present with me. They're not here today, so it's just me. If you don't know who I am, I'm Alexander van Cervelen, based in Singapore. I'm the consultant for research intelligence in Southeast Asia. We've been doing these webinars because of the COVID situation. Everyone's been at home, and so far they've been well attended. They've covered a number of different topics, from very basic things like searching in Scopus to understanding how the content is selected, author profiles, how to analyze journals in Scopus, what metrics are in Scopus to do analysis, what you can do. And today we're here, 14th of July. Usually we're doing Wednesdays. This is the one exception because I have the day off tomorrow for my birthday. So we're doing institutional profiles, and in 2 weeks we're doing advanced search. 2 weeks after that we're doing search alerts and how to customize Scopus. And then on the 26th of August will be our last webinar, which will look at funding acknowledgements. The agenda today, as always, is to start at the beginning and to do an introduction. I don't know how many people know Scopus well, attended the previous webinars, or might be here for the first time. Focus is, as I've said already 5 times, the institutional profiles in Scopus, and I'm going to show you live in Scopus what they look like, how they work, and what they can do for you. And you can use the Q&A function to ask questions, and then I'm going to look through the questions that have been asked, and I'll try to answer a number of them in the second half of the session today. We're also recording the session. We will disseminate the recording to everyone who has registered using an institutional email address. So that means not Gmail, not Yahoo, and so forth. So I'm going to start with an introduction, but before I start, I'm going to run a poll and ask that you answer some basic questions about who you are and so forth. So this time I think I have 3 questions, but it's the only poll that I'm going to run today. So just humor me and you know, go through these questions, and much appreciated if you can just go through and select the options that make sense to you, because that will help me to understand who you are and kind of customize or direct what I'm saying with that understanding. So I'm going to leave this open because it's 3 questions for 2 minutes. So far it's been 25 seconds, and 18 out of 62 people have voted. Okay, so 60% of you have voted. Fantastic. So it's been open for a minute. I'm going to give it a whole another minute. So take your time, think about it, and please answer the questions if you haven't already. It's incredibly helpful for me to know who's here, since we're not able to have discussions and talk. I can't see anyone. So this is the only way for us to engage in this environment. Okay, so the voting seems to have stopped. We're at 50 out of 67 people. Oh no, there a couple more people are voting. So 20 more seconds, and then it will have been open for a whole 2 minutes. All right, 10 more seconds. So for those of you who already voted, bear with me. 3 more seconds, and I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So we can see that the most people here, actually 60% together, are students and researchers. So that's fantastic. I think Scopus is a great tool for researchers. And 28% of the people are librarians. So wait a minute. So 28% of the people here are librarians. Librarians, we know you well, so greetings, hello. Just 4% are research administrators, research managers, but Scopus does and can be used for analytical processes, and that's also relevant to policymakers, faculty members, welcome also. We see that 93% of the people here have access to Scopus at their institution, so that's great. I just wanted to make sure that those of you here, if you were coming from institutions that don't subscribe, then that's an interesting thing that we would want to understand, but it seems like most of you already have access to Scopus. There's no issue there. My colleague Shubhra has just joined. She is my counterpart in India, and I asked her last minute, just this morning, if she could jump in because my other two colleagues didn't come, but I'm not expecting her to speak. So I think at the moment you just see her photograph there. So if she didn't know that I made her a co-host, then she'll have to forgive me for putting her on the spot. So that kind of distracted me. But have you attended 2 more of the previous webinars? So this is the 6th webinar. 30% of you have been here before and you came back. So thanks for coming. I hope that means that it's useful. And we have quite a few new people as well. So thank you very much for participating in this poll. That's incredibly helpful to me. And I'll just move on. So as an introduction, for those of you, there's always a couple new people. If you don't know what Scopus is, it's a source neutral abstract and citation database. So it's a curated data set of peer-reviewed content, right? Scientific research that's peer-reviewed. It comes from 5,000 different publishers, ranging from big publishers to very small ones. It's about 24,000 serial titles. And it's there for you to find the content as well as to kind of analytical functions over them. I won't go into details on that. The content, about 11% of the journals are from the company that built Scopus, which is Elsevier. So I work for Elsevier. And only about 40% of the content is from the big publishers. 60% of the content is from smaller publishers. All of the content is reviewed. So all journals to get into Scopus have to be reviewed by an independent content selection advisory board, because we want every journal that's in Scopus to be genuine peer-reviewed science. So it has to go through that process. We span across all the subject areas. We have journals, conference proceedings, books, and book series. Scopus includes content from over 100 different countries in 40 different languages. It's updated every day. and there are almost 9 million open access documents that you can find via Scopus. So I got a lot of questions from people who came to these webinars the first time, and they said, does Scopus have the full text? And it does not have the full text, so it's an abstract and citation database. But from Scopus, you can link from the item in Scopus to the publisher. And either the publisher is a publisher that you need to subscribe to, or it could be that that item or journal is open access, in which case you can see the content. So if you break down the different document types by subject area, you can see that the journals are 32% health science, 34% physical science, 12% social sciences, 22% life sciences. Conferences are much more about physical sciences, right? Very little about social sciences, while books are 45% social sciences and much less health sciences. So you can see the different content types of different breakdowns in terms of subject areas. Scopus is part of a wider portfolio at Elsevier, which we call Research Intelligence. It spans across things like search and discovery, finding content, managing and showcasing, evaluating, and so forth. But I won't really talk about that too much because the focus of today is the institutional profiles in Scopus. So I might have mentioned to you that the way that Scopus works is you don't just have all of the content in a database and just find the items, but we've done a lot of data enrichment process so that profiles are created for every single author that has at least one paper in Scopus, and for most of the institutions. So we have author profiles and affiliation profiles, and these are really useful things to have. You don't need to make it. So as an author, you don't need to go in and create your profile, or an institution, you also don't need to go in and make the profile. It is algorithmically created so that it's scaled across the whole database. So that means that every author has a profile, every institution has a profile, and that means that you can fairly analyze compared to peers because everyone has a profile. While if only some people had a profile, it wouldn't really be a fair comparison. If you were identifying, for example, the best person in a particular subject area and you have only 20% of the population as a profile, then whatever the result is not going to be fair. So scalability is very important. The institutional profiles in Scopus are such that every institution has a profile. It's done by algorithm so that all papers written by authors which are affiliated to a particular institution, in that paper, all those papers are sorted into the profiles, right? So if there's a paper that says Alexander van Cervelen is the author, usually there's a little A or a letter next to my name. It's going to say in that specific paper which institution I'm affiliated to, right? Also, what the profiles do is identify the many different ways in which an institutional name is represented in the data. So, for example, Chiang Mai University might be written in some papers as Chiang Mai University. In other papers, it might be like Chiang Mai U dot, right? So it might be an abbreviation, or you might even have some people that say something like University of Chiang Mai, or different variants. So the algorithm and the work that we've done at Scopus is to collect a map of all the different name variants which are used to represent one organization, so that all the papers that mention those different name variants are associated to the same profile. Management of universities, so it could be library, it could be research office, can ask Scopus or Elsevier for access to the institutional profile wizard, or otherwise known as IPW, which allows those authorized people to make modifications to the profile. So there are a lot of universities who have gone in to refine their profile and to make slight modifications, which all helps to make it even more high quality. Here's an example of a paper in Scopus about, yeah, who cares what it's about? It's not my field, so it's hard for me to describe what it's about. But this paper has a number of authors, right? So we can see each author has some letters next to his or her name. And we can see that there are these different affiliations. So all the ones in yellow are Chiang Mai University, right? So here you see Faculty of Medicine, Chiang Mai University, Chiang Mai, Chiang Mai. And these are all from King Mongkut University of University of Technology in Thonburi, KMUTT. So this paper would be sorted into the affiliation or institutional profile of both KMUTT and Chiang Mai University. So the paper doesn't get split in half, it just gets put into both profiles. Which is what we refer to as whole counting the paper. It exists in both profiles. Every institution has a profile and therefore also has a profile page in Scopus. So here you see Chiang Mai University. You can see the name, you can see some other formats, and every affiliation institutional ID or has an ID, sorry, every institutional profile has an affiliation ID, which is these digits here that you could use to search for it. The profile page itself, having the profile means it's easier to find all the documents that belong to one institution or one hospital or one university, whatever it is, to analyze that based on metrics. How many papers did they produce? What's the growth? What's the citation rate? Who are the top authors and so forth? So doing kind of light analytics. And the institutional profile page is also where those people authorized at these institutions can make modifications to the profile. So I try not to present too many slides these days, so that's all I have. We're going to go to scopus.com. And I'm going to trust that you guys can see scopus.com since I'm presenting alone today. And we land here on this page where you can see different search options, but in this case, we're going to search for, hide my, so let's stick with the example of Chiang Mai. So I'm going to type in Chiang Mai. So here we see searching for Chiang Mai in affiliations, we find a bunch of different profiles which might have mention of the name Chiang Mai, right? It might be the city that the institution says that they're in, or so forth. But I see here at the top Chiang Mai University, which was the example that I started with today. So here we see affiliation details, Chiang Mai University. Affiliation ID is this number here. You could do an advanced search searching with that number. We see some other formats. Now, the cool thing is that you have a lot of information here about Chiang Mai University. You have their output broken down by subject area, right? So if you were doing an analysis, you could see some interesting things here. You could see that they collaborate mostly with Mahidol and Chula and Kongkien, and you could link through to the collaborative papers. So there's more kind of analytics thing for people who are doing an analysis. But you could also see who are the authors that are affiliated to Chiang Mai University, right? So you can see all the authors who have at least one paper which is affiliated to Chiang Mai University, such as Songsak. So you can see that Songsak is affiliated to Chiang Mai University. So we can link from the affiliation profile in this case to the authors which are affiliated to the institution. We could also look at all of the papers, right? So if we wanted to look at here Chiang Mai University and, for example, analyze the content. So again, I'm thinking analytical workflow. It's more my my background. But so if I was somebody working in the Thai government and I wanted to see how's Chiang Mai doing in terms of output, I might go here. Or who are the most prolific authors, those type of things, what subject areas they publish in. If I were a researcher, I might not be looking in the profile to begin with. I don't think it's a typical researcher use case, but you could say, well, I want to look at some of the highest cited articles. So we can use the filter here to have the highest cited articles put at the top. And obviously, you can, as a researcher, click through to any articles and judge if this is something that you want to look into. So we can see this is a very highly impactful article. And if you wanted to link to the full text, right, you go here and it's going to take you to the publisher that has published this paper. So here it's the New England Journal of Medicine. And it looks like the whole full text is here. So it's probably open access. So I'm going to go back to the profile page. It's a lot of clicks for me to get back. All right, there we are. So you could set a feed or document alert. So if you wanted to get an alert every time that a new document is published by Chiang Mai University, if that's your university, you can set that up. You can, and this is if you are an authorized administrator, right, and you have access to the institutional profile wizard. So for most of you, this is irrelevant, but for some of the librarians who are attending today, this might be relevant. So if you have access to the institutional profile wizard, you can modify the profile. So you can create new profiles and create hierarchy. For example, here you see that Chiang Mai University, at the top level is Chiang Mai, but they have a separate profile for the Faculty of Medicine and a separate profile for the Institute of Science and Technology Research and Development. So you can create sub-profiles for faculties if you wish, and if the authors have consistently mentioned clearly which faculty they work at in the papers, right? So if the faculty information is in the papers, you can create faculties and create the hierarchical organization of the profile. And a great example of that, actually, so you have three different things before I could show you this great example. There are three different things. You can modify or create hierarchy. You can modify the profile. So for example, you can say what the preferred name is, what the home page is, the address, and so forth. And then it's going to ask you what all the different ways are. So that map of name variants, you can enrich that and say there are many other name variants and so forth. But those of you who get access or do have access to IPW, if you need help using it, you can email me. The result of a profile which is worked out in detail is, for example, A-STAR. So A-STAR is a research institution in Singapore that it was my privilege to work with a few years back. And as part of the work that we did together, we created this hierarchy here. So you see A* actually has 2 research councils, and the Biomedical Research Council and the Science and Engineering Research Council. And under each council, they have a number of very specific institutes. So we created 2 levels of hierarchy. So you have one level here, right? So that A* is basically 2 research councils. And then we have the second level, which is each of the institutions. That just means that you can click at the top level and you get, as a user, you can see all 53,000 documents, and they're all attributed to A* at the top level. But if you wanted to see the papers of just the Bioinformatics Institute, they also have their own profile. So you can see, oh, look, Bioinformatics Institute has published these 1,200 articles. So that's the kind of the ideal situation in which a lot of work has gone into creating these high quality, very detailed, granularly organized hierarchy. But of course, the data has to be there. So it means that the researchers have to mention very clearly which, in this case, institute they work at in the papers. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So if we were to look at the Bioinformatics Institutes and so here you see that author 1 and the corresponding author have indicated that they're B, where it clearly says not just A*, but it says Bioinformatics Institute at A*, and that's why Scopus is able to identify that this paper belongs to not just A*, but the Bioinformatics Institute at A*. So the information that the authors put in the paper, which is published, which is provided to Scopus, is very important in terms of being able to attribute the paper to the correct institutional profile. I think that was probably all the things that I wanted to say. So I'm going to go on to try and answer some questions and see what's in there. So there are no open questions. So that either means that I was really, really clear about everything, or that you've all fallen asleep, or that Shubhra has answered everything, which is even better.
Alexander, there was just one question on how to check author profile.
How to check the author profile?
Yes, by Muhammad Shafiq.
Okay, Mohammed. The way to check an author profile is to type in a name. So I'm going to go, oh, sorry. I'm going to go with my professor's name. You can try with the first letter. If you have a very common name, you might want to try the affiliation, but so here we go. I found his profile by searching. So I'll try that again with like a different name, maybe something a bit more common. So if I say, so here I get, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, well, I don't know who that is. So if I go back and say, I want just the ones that are affiliated to the University of Amsterdam, then I'll probably get less. So here I got just 3. And that's not the person I'm looking for. This is Bernd. And I'm looking for this person here. So you can use that. The name, probably it's going to be even more specific if I put in yeah. So anyway, so the search function is you go to Scopus search and you type in the name. Sorry, it's displaying a bit weird, but yeah, you type in the last name first name or first letter, and optionally you can fill in the institution like that. Another way to do it would be find a paper. So if you search for, like if you know you have a paper in Scopus, right? So let's pretend that this is my paper. It's not, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the point. We'll wait for Scopus to load. All right, I seem to have angered it. There we go. So here we see a paper. So let's pretend that this is my paper or your paper. You found it in Scopus, and let's pretend that I'm Mr. or Mrs. V. Dixit. If I click on that, boom, it's going to open the author profile. So two ways, either search by author name in the actual author search, right? Or find the document and then link from the document to the author profile. Okay, so it's very quiet. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them, and I'll try to answer them.
There's one come up in the chat now. How
Yeah,
do I know? How do I know that journal which I am going to submit is in the Scopus cited? I'm assuming they want to ask the journal that they want to submit the manuscript to. Is it indexed in Scopus and how many citations does it receive? I think
that's an
that's what they
excellent
mean.
question. It's not on the topic today, but since no one's asking questions about institutional profiles, I forgive you and we'll answer the question. So yeah, so it's important to know which journals are in Scopus. That's a very fair question. And at the top, you have a menu here, and it says sources. This could easily be called journals, but we have journals, conferences, books, and such, and that's why it's not called journals. It's called sources. So we have active and inactive titles. So you need to be a bit careful to see that what journal you're publishing in is an active journal that's in Scopus. The most authoritative place to do that is right here, is to download this list, find the journal in the massive Excel sheet, and look at what the, how do you say, just see if it's an active or inactive journal, right? So some journals have stopped existing, some journals are even removed from Scopus, and that will be indicated here. But maybe before you go there, just within the within Scopus, so if I was looking at like so this journal, developmental psychology, the Scopus coverage years are 1969 to present, and I can see that it's got this profile in Scopus, but also, let me see. I can see they've published already in 2020, so it's pretty clear that they're an active journal that's in Scopus. But again, if I was in doubt about the status, that was the word I was looking for, status. If I was looking for the status of a journal, a particular journal, right? I was thinking of publishing in there. I'm like, well, I'm not sure. Download the Scopus source list and have a look there. We are very serious about journal quality, and therefore any journals which show funny behavior are going into a reevaluation process, and we end up de-indexing some journals. So if you want to be a little bit careful in terms of what journal you're publishing, and especially if it's fourth quartile, we of course you should assume that everything in Scopus is good quality. But there are times when journals which were accepted into Scopus previously sometimes change their behavior. They get a different management, and they may adopt practices which are no longer resulting in good quality science. And then we will have them de-indexed. So there's always this a few cases of that every year. And I would say if you want to be 100% sure to avoid something like that, is aim a bit higher. You know, we want to have a comprehensive database, so we include you know, the full spectrum of science. But why aim at the fourth quartile in terms of quality if you could aim at the third, second, or first? So these quartiles are based on site score. So every journal has a quality measure based on citations. We can see the site score of this journal is 5.7, and actually it ranks number 26 in 327 journals in developmental psychology. So this is a very high quality journal. So I would not be worried about this journal at all, that maybe it would be de-indexed or have any kind of problem. But if I were to look at only fourth quartile journals, ooh, I think I did something I didn't like. But anyway, you can search for the sources here, and if you want to know the formal status, you can see in this list here. And I think if you want to 100% avoid any problem, any issue with journal quality, is simply aim higher at first, second, or third quartile. Fourth quartile, again, any journal that content that's selected into Scopus at the time of selection, we're quite confident that it's high quality, right? We've checked that it's peer reviewed. We've looked at the editors, looked at the authors, looked at the content, all by the Content Selection Advisory Board. But at times there may be some journals which get removed in the long run, but they are usually lower quartile journals.
Okay, then someone asked if the recording would be shared with them. So, and does I think it would be shared because
Yeah,
you have been
we
sharing all
will
the other recordings.
email the recording of this webinar to everyone who registered using an institutional ID. So that means not like Gmail address. Yep.
Okay, and we have this one question which they say connected to the Chiang Mai University. If I have defined a faculty of science in the institutional profile, probably. So, do I have to define another called the rest?
I'm not sure. Can you repeat the question? Your voice is a bit in the background, Trooper.
If I defined a faculty of science in the institutional profile of, let's say, Chiang Mai University, do I have to define another called the rest?
No, you don't. So I'm assuming that the person asking the question is thinking if they have access to the institutional profile wizard, which means they need to be management of the university. But no, you can create one faculty and all the other content would be under the main profile, and then you would have one sub profile for the faculty. Probably doesn't make sense in most cases unless it's a hospital. If you do it for one faculty, maybe you should do it for the other faculties as well. Sometimes I see, quite often I see the opposite, where a university says, hey, I have a main profile and I have a profile for one faculty and I want it all merged together because it's more simple. I would suggest the person gets in touch with whoever their consultant is to discuss how and what the best way to make changes would be for their profile.
there are a couple of questions on a few articles from these authors were present in Scopus previously, but it is not there. But probably the journal they would have to check if it's indexed in Scopus or not.
Yeah. So if you think that, hey, I have this paper and I don't see it in Scopus, then you need to be sure that the journal that you published in is indexed in Scopus. And sometimes some journals are a little bit late providing their content to Scopus. So if it's like a paper published in 2020 and you see it on the journal website, but it's not in Scopus, sometimes it just takes a bit of time for the content to make it from the journal to Scopus. That's something that depends not just on us, but on the, there's 24,000 different journals which are providing us with the data, the content, and some are simply faster than others. So those are the two main reasons why it might not be there. Either the journal's not indexed or the content just hasn't arrived yet. Okay.
I
Are
don't
there?
see any more questions related to institutional profile as such, but they are more on Scopus content only. Again, a similar thing. How can I know all about Scopus journals on mathematics? I think you already showed that.
Yeah, I mean, so all right, mathematics, you would go to sources and use the subject area. Mathematics, and there you have 1,857 journals or titles related to mathematics in Scopus. So it's quite straightforward. Okay. If there are no further questions, then maybe we'll get back 15 minutes of our lives and see you next time. I would thank Shubha very much for coming and actually helping me with some of these questions today. I know it was very last minute, and I'll try to never do that again so last minute, but it's much appreciated. And we will send across the link to the video as well as the slides, and hope this was at least somewhat helpful, and wish you all a nice week. Maybe see you next time. Take care, everyone.